The most important work of your life is the work you do within your soul. This is Home Improvement for the Soul.
Hello, and welcome to Home Improvement for the Soul. I am Maddie Cheers, and joining me today is Paula Jennings. Paula has a wonderful and interesting story, kind of like we did with Bob Vetter, with my husband. If you were on for that, we are looking at people who are our age, who are elders or wisdom keepers. And in listening to their stories, what we're hoping is that a lot of the questions, a lot of the anxiety, even the depression that young people are feeling in trying to maneuver their way through this world, in these stories and our stories as elders, they can hear that we too went through the same kinds of things. We had the same kinds of anxieties when we were younger. We did not have the complexity that the world has right now. We certainly weren't dealing with social media, but in general, the resilience that you gain through life comes from dealing with things that are pretty tough, comes from dealing with loss, comes from what's that thing that John Lennon said? Life is what happens to you while you're waiting for your plans to work out. So that is a lot of what we want to share here, those of us who are going to be on the show who are of a certain age and a certain generation. And so I have invited Paula here because her story is just wonderful. So Paula, welcome to Home Improvement for the Soul.
Thank you, Maddie. I'm so absolutely delighted to be here with you and to share my story. And I want to thank you really for the opportunity to be able to hopefully impact even one person with my story, to impact them to have hope.
Well, it certainly impacted me, even though we're close to the same age. But
right.
But just your journey from Ireland
Yes.
to here to Wall Street to becoming a healer.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating. Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
share.
Okay. The spotlight's on me. So when I was in my 20s, I had what I know now is a spiritual emergency, in terms of, I guess it was a form of awakening that took me to a place of really solitude, and I guess it would be described from the outside as almost mental illness, right? But from the inside, it felt more like I was getting to explore deeper parts of my psyche. And through that process in my 20s, I emerged, late 20s, I guess, really with a very strong voice in my head telling me that I was to go to America, which was not what I had intended for my life. It was not what I expected. My father, I remember his words were over my dead body because they had shepherded and nurtured me through this period of my 20s that was not so great. And I know that there's 20-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds out there who might be suffering from something similar. It was this disconnection from life. It was this feeling that my life wasn't worth anything, right? And so, but the voice nonetheless was very strong, and it wasn't one that I could ignore. And I remember what happened, and I think this is an important part of the story, is that I was slowed down by breaking my ankle. So I'm a firm believer that the body whispers, and then the body, gets a little louder. And for me, I was always on the go. I was always, I was social, and I was doing step aerobics, believe it or not. That dates me, when I fell over. But what it did was it gave me a pause, and it gave me time and space to listen to what my inner guidance was telling me. And so I think that that's one of the most important things from my story, is that along the way, somehow I was able to connect into that voice that was still and small, and that was giving me the right guidance. Sometimes we have other voices that are not the right guidance,
yes.
But somehow this voice, I guess the circumstances, and I guess what I want to say there is that reflecting back and having experienced many things since then, life will always give you what you need. Like it's important to trust whatever happens to you, even if it seems like it's the worst thing in the world. Sometimes there is, when you get to our age and you start to look back and do a life review of the arc of our lives, I can see clearly now how everything fits so beautifully together to bring me to where I am in this moment. And it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, and you're not supposed to know, and you're not supposed to be able to find certain pieces until later. Anyway, I'll continue with the story. I just wanted to pause to say that.
No, that's great, because I do think that's a lot of what young people struggle with, is they feel like, why aren't all the pieces in place right now?
Yes, well, they would be in place, or they will be in place at some moment in the future. But it's always important to remember where you are at any given moment. Trust it, and look around and pay attention where you are, rather than thinking of what's missing, or rather than thinking about, what you don't have. If you're out of alignment, or if you're feeling there's something not right in your life, the best thing to do is to stop and to just go inside, maybe journaling, or take yourself out to nature, because the answers are always within. There's a sanctuary within that has everything. And you have access to it if you allow yourself and give yourself permission to do that. So basically from sort of this not great place, I ended up getting on a plane, and lots of serendipitous things happened along the way to sort of let me know that I was making the right choice. And that's the other thing. Like, there's always signs. There's always things that come. Like, I bought a one-way ticket. I quit my job. I was working for this building society in Dublin, which is like a mortgage investment company. Did not love it. Really felt very capped in terms of women were only going to go so high. They were never going to be managers. They were always just going to be supervisors. And so had this went in, quit like literally on a Monday, and bought my ticket the following Monday to go to the States. I had enough money for a one-way ticket and about $500 on top of that for my spending money. Lucky I had a friend's couch in Queens to stay on. And we get to the airport. My father is bringing me, and I have some friends who are coming to say goodbye. And Daddy met one of his friends, and he upgraded me to first class.
Wow.
I had never, ever experienced that before in my life. And so here I was having bought this one-way cheapest ticket I could find. And I knew that again, was a God wink. Like, that was a sign. And so I get to the States, and I was really still probably in a little bit of a vulnerable place. I was still trying to find myself. I felt a little awkward being on my friend's couch, and I was getting up every day, just going looking for jobs. Wasn't really sure where I was going to land. I was going for waitressing jobs. I was going for all kinds of different things. And the goddess, in the form of my mother, calls me and she tells me about a job that's open, that's advertised in the Irish Times. And it was for somebody who had a green card, which I did have at that time, and also qualifications in finance, which I also did have. So I went, and lo and behold, this guy hired me. I told him it was in a very complex area of finance, and I told him I don't know anything about this. I, might have fibbed and said I knew how to use Excel, and even though I didn't. I took a course that weekend, but he hired me, and I found myself literally catapulted into a completely different life. Literally, I'm in this building in Midtown Manhattan, through a series of other events. A friend of mine, her cousin was leaving, and I took over their sublet, which was on Madison Avenue. So within a couple of weeks of and so that to me was orchestrated by something higher. I couldn't have created it. I couldn't have dreamed it if I wanted it.
And I think this is something too that we heard with Bob that I know for myself too, and that we know for all people who are spiritually attuned, is that you pay attention. Yeah. You take the risk, and you're bold because you have faith that it is spirit guiding this.
Exactly.
And I think that what underpins that too are your relationships. So you've got your parents, you've got your friends whose couch you're sleeping on.
Yes.
That was like me when I first moved to the city. New York City, for those of you who don't live in New York. To us, there is only one city, the city, which means Manhattan. So same thing. I decided to move to Manhattan, and lo and behold, my cousin's grandmother decides she's going to Florida for 6 months. So I apartments that for the first 6 months that I was there. I didn't pay a cent in rent for 6 months. So you just, when you put the right thing out there, like you said, there are signs, but you have to put it out there.
Yes.
And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck, is they're not making the bold move.
Right.
You know, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Sometimes you really have to ask yourself that. What's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Yeah, I love that, because many of us just become used to sort of a humdrum, and to take the risk. Everybody around you was probably going to tell you you're a little crazy. I don't know if that happened to you, but my whole family said, the guy, when I went into to quit, he said to me, at your age, where do you think you're going? What do you think you're going to accomplish? Now, I was 30 at that point. I felt like I was an 18-year-old still, but at 30, if you weren't married with children in Ireland, like you were, there was like, that was the dominant thinking, that a woman was going to get married in her 20s, and if she's 30, she's kind of over the hill, and there was not going to be a new start. But I knew that I had to do this almost to prove to myself, and perhaps to, take on this larger, which I realized later, this larger mission of recognizing that I'm a voice for the divine feminine. I'm a voice for what's possible for women, that is not about resisting the past, or it's about really creating this new future that that is open for us. And so that was the journey. I literally went, started to work at this company. I was really in the most complex derivatives. I don't even know how I did the spreadsheets. Still don't really know how I figured out this stuff, but it just came to me. Somehow it came to me.
Right.
I had a great team. As you said, the other point that you made, I really wanted to iterate, is that the people around you, that the security that you have and the community that you have who believe in you no matter what, is so important for the journey. If you're isolated, or you don't feel that you have that can really keep you stuck. You're less likely to take risks. You're less likely to make the bold moves if you don't feel like, oh, I know that I'll be loved anyway, right?
Right. And I think that's one of the problems that young people face today, very much, because there are too many voices in their head.
Yes.
Because their social interactions are largely on social media.
That's true.
And unless they're like, we know many young people that have thrown away their phones, they've gotten off of Facebook, except to like check in on their friends. There is a movement where young people are realizing, no, I need the face-to-face.
Yes.
Forget the Facebook.
Right.
I need the face-to-face so that I can have that kind of support. You're not going to find it on social media.
No, that's true. That's true. And the more that you can gather, and the more that you can come together in person with people. I mean, I preferably love in being in nature, like the circles that you run a lot. Like there are places where all generations can come together, connect back into the essence of the land that we're on, or this environment that we're surrounded by, and also like really feel that resonance that we know that our nervous systems regulate to one another, right? So when we're vibrating, and when our hearts are communicating without us even knowing our hearts are communicating before we speak, right? The energy shows up before we do. That is such a regulator for the nervous system. Those things I didn't recognize back then. I didn't necessarily know, but there was, I guess, that's a key part of my journey, is being able to allow myself to be supported and surrounded by people that I loved, and allow myself to be able to also support them. It was this need for community, this need for connection.
Right. And that's the one thing, we were just talking about AI and how there are some amazing uses for it, but in this rush to convince young people mostly that AI is the answer to everything, AI can imitate things because it holds a ton of information, but it cannot have a heart.
Right.
It can only access the brain.
Yeah.
So we know that there are 40,000 neural pathways in the heart.
That's right.
So only human beings can make that heart-brain coherence, as the Heart Math Institute calls it, as Dr. Bruce Lipton calls it, as Greg Braden calls it, all these people. So only a human can do that. So yes, AI can put together some amazing poems like we were talking about, where no one can tell the difference between did a human write this, did a computer write this, because it can imitate what humans have already written from the heart.
Yeah.
But AI cannot sit with you and hold you.
Right.
AI cannot relate to you. It cannot comfort you. It cannot listen to you, and without it listens, it's going to probably copy every single thing that you say, but it can't spit back to you some heartfelt, loving answer.
Yeah.
It can't let you sleep on its couch.
Exactly.
Let's face it.
and offer you a cup of tea in the morning when you're not feeling great.
Exactly.
No, but it's true. And I think that we're moving towards a more heart-centered world. You know, I heard the other day about, this Greek word nous, N-O-U-S, it means, it kind of has the Greeks have this interesting way of looking at the mind, as do many indigenous cultures, right? The mind and the heart. They don't separate them between to them. And so nous means the eye of the heart. And so I've been thinking about how much that has affected my journey in terms of being able to use the mind to serve what it is. Like, so sometimes we can be very top heavy. When I was on Wall Street, my mind was always going, right? I was in my mind a lot.
Right.
But in some ways, what distinguished me and maybe was in part responsible for my success was that I always came back to my heart. I think Irish people, we have that natural ability to lead with the heart. And so even though I was using my mind in ways that were doing what I was doing, what was really important was the fact that there was that connection, there was that realization that the mind wasn't separate. And maybe that was because of the journey I'd had with exploration and the trauma that I had overcome. But I always was aware of this sense that what really is important is to be kind, is to love. Like, love conquers everything.
Right.
And so I know at the time a lot of people would have had even, feelings about people on Wall Street, right? What they were doing. And there was a lot of protests when I was there. And I also had my own feelings about that. But at the end of the day, humans are, where our default state is love. Our default state is to come into coherence with our hearts to one another.
Yes.
And if you don't experience that, if you don't experience that connection, or you are somehow, COVID had a really big impact on kind of separating people from that. And in some ways, I think it had us all understand. It was a contrast. It had us all understand how much we value connection.
Yes.
And how much connection is what keeps us together, and how much the energy of the people that you're with influences how you feel. Like, we all want to feel good, right? All of us want to feel good. And so when you're with people who feel good and who have that, who are heart-centered, and I don't want the listeners not to, when I talk about heart-centered, what I'm really meaning is that you're connecting into who you are.
Right.
Through a compassionate lens, through a self-loving lens. It took me, and I'll continue with my journey now, but I think a lot of my journey, a lot of the wisdom can be encapsulated in that one concept, that I went through what I went through, and I had the twists and turns, and all the loss as well, mainly to come to a deeper understanding of the connection between my heart and my mind and the body, and the interconnection between other people, and how everything is energy, and that my energy is something that I get to be responsible for on a daily basis. So when I come in to any space, I can choose to be an uplifter, or I can choose to allow myself to be pulled down by the vibration of other people. And I think that's another lesson along the way. And you learn, right? You learn by having failed. You learn by having done it the other way.
Exactly. And this is something we need to let young people know, is that failing's okay.
Yes.
Just try it.
Yes.
You got one life.
Exactly.
I always love what Janet Joplin said, and I probably have said this before on the show. It's just one long day.
Right.
We are not, when you're young, you really have no awareness of this, but that's why us old people have to tell you this. We're here for an eye blink.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's really just one continuous motion. Mm-hmm. And your body ages and it stops doing certain things, but it releases your heart.
Yes.
That's where the potential is. It's not just the release of the mind. It's the release of the heart. But that only happens if you really are paying attention to all the things around you.
Yes.
And to the people around you.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you, because I do know your story, obviously. So when you were on Wall Street, what exactly were you doing, and then what changed it for you? Okay.
So I started, as I said, as a consultant. This guy hired me literally on blind faith, and I ended up, there's a couple of different stages in my career on Wall Street. So the first one was supporting traders who were, doing their risk and profit and loss. So literally showing the trader at the end of the day what their positions were. That was a pretty intense job, and it required me to be, literally in the office 9, 10 o'clock most nights, because, we would do a debrief on their trading day. When I met my husband and we decided that we were going to start to get married and have a family, I decided to transition into something else. So I became a project manager. So sort of the second part of my career was a project manager. And the last piece was I was always somebody who I would do a job for 2 years, 2.5 years within the same organization, or in some cases I changed organizations, because I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to know, well, how does this work? And if I'm working on this piece, what comes before it? What comes after? I think a curious mind is something that also really helps you to be able to move from places to places, to maintain that awe, to maintain that wonder. Okay, I'm doing this now, and it may not be the greatest thing, but what are my options? And is it good? Let me look around. Let me talk to people. What do you do? And so I always was thinking about, I was doing what I was doing, and I was doing it well. And then I was always thinking about, well, what other area of the bank would I like to explore? So I did change a couple of times within the organization. The last job I was doing, I was the chief operating officer of a large global bank, the finance division. And so I found myself in this place surrounded by analytical masculines who were really great. And also they were sort of missing the heart connection. If I were to be very bold, say that. They were a shocker. They were very much in their heads. Like they operated in their heads to the point where it was really kind of comical to me. Like they didn't really know how to interact with. They didn't know how to collaborate. They didn't know how to kind of really. And so my job was to be the grease of the wheels between the process, the technology, the people. I was responsible for all of our philanthropic efforts. I was responsible for loyalty. For keeping people loyal and wanting to work there, for making it a good environment. I was literally physically responsible for the whole environment. I was responsible for all the technology projects and all change. So I've always gravitated towards change processes, transition and change, because there's always opportunities in change to kind of do things differently. And I think one of the aspects of change, especially within a large organization, it's really important to consider the people. It's really important to consider, how is this going to impact, which the masculine doesn't always take account of that. The masculine sometimes is just looking at this. I've got this goal. I want to go from here to there. So when I was on I was basically on an 11-man management team. I was the only female. And I was the one who was questioning. I brought in a different perspective. Now, I love being around tables that are diverse. I love, it was a little bit difficult to be around a table where I was the one that was the odd one out. And I did my best to change that within the organization I was in. I brought in a lot of women and created a program for diverse, for development of diverse candidates.
Wow.
To raise up, to be elevated.
You were ahead of your time.
A little bit. The other thing I did, which is really important, was I recognized that I had become this person that everyone depended on, which was good in some ways, but it meant my door was never closed. And also I was energetically, and I wasn't really fully aware of sort of my energetic body at this point, but I noticed that it started to take its toll on my physical body, on my energetic body, because when you're in that state of taking care of everybody's emotional needs, and then I started having a family, and so it all became a lot. It kind of got bigger and bigger, and so I realized if I were to teach them what it would be like to ground in values and to have them see their commonalities. So I created a program basically based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right. And suddenly got them in a room. This is the first time, it's hard to believe, but this is the first time that we all came together as all these different managers of different streams of business to say, okay, where can there be synergies? How can we work together? How can we can we define our values? Can we define where we're going? And can we all agree that we're going to go there together? I mean, that had never been done before in the organization I was in.
And this is such an important thing that you did in the organization, because what you're talking about right now is exactly what we need to do in society.
Exactly. And this was a microcosm,
yes,
of a macrocosm.
Yes.
And it was recognizing that if I have a gift of recognizing that we work better together, or whatever it was, what I saw, I think part of it was driven by the fact that I didn't want to stay in that role forever either. I didn't, I wanted to, and it's kind of how I approach my healing in some ways too. It's recognizing that that everybody has what they need in order to be able to perform at their top potential. Like, we all have it within us, and some of us are here to sort of open the can to share tools that have people recognize that they can do it themselves. It's never about, and sometimes it can be, and I have been on that journey too, right, where you're being the bolster, or you're keeping somebody up instead of letting them learn the lessons and letting them have their growth. I mean, we do that with our children. I've definitely had, I've noticed how I can do that with my children, and I've started to recognize I'm cheating them of the lesson of life. Like, they need to be able to learn these things.
Yes.
It's the most awful thing as a mother or as a friend to see somebody fail, but it's also so triumphant when you see them overcoming it. So I think what I learned from those days is always to look at somebody's highest self.
Yes.
Not to look at them in everybody is living in their full potential at every moment. I truly believe that. And it's a gift to be able to see that full potential and not come from that place of codependency. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. And it goes along with that idea that people say, well, be the best you can be every day. Right. The best you can be every day is different every day. Sometimes the best you can be is, I'm going to sit down and watch a movie, and then I'm going to watch another movie, and then I'm going to watch another movie, and it's going to be 3 chick flicks in a row, and eat some popcorn, and that's the best I can be today, and it's okay. I think that's what we learn as we get older, is that we stop judging ourselves, and once you stop judging yourself, you stop judging other people.
That's right.
And that's one of the biggest problems we face, as all of us know, with cancel culture and everything else, that we're very judgmental.
Yes.
I always love that there's a meme out there with a guy holding up a sign that says, non-judgment day is coming. That's it. That will be the great shift. Everybody talks about the great shift. The great shift is not going to be judgment day. It's going to be non-judgment day. We're all going, whew.
Yes, exactly. And and it, non-judgment, how do we get to a place of non-judgment? It's, again, those neural pathways of the heart. It's continually coming back to self-compassion. It's continually coming back to say, it's okay. There's days, and I will tell you, where the best I could do was to lay in bed all day. And I didn't decide that was, I decided that was something that wasn't doing nothing. There was something happening. Even if you're lying in bed, you feel that awful, and you remember that your body is actually coming back into balance.
Yep.
Like, it's about this trusting the processes of your body. It doesn't mean I'm going to stay in bed for 365 days in a row. I'm going to start to then say, okay, maybe I need to do something differently.
Yep.
If I'm landing it, if I'm finding this. And usually your environment will tell you what's throwing you off a balance. And again, back to what you said, pay attention to what life shows you, because life, we don't need to seek. Don't need to go look for.
Right.
Life is always right here, reflected in our relationships, reflected in our relationship to ourselves, in our relationship to the resources we have, and to nature. It's always reflecting back to us exactly everything we need to know about ourselves. Quite often, the challenge is just simply to notice that.
To look, to see, to
it's
pay
so
attention.
Profound, and it's
Yes.
so simple.
Yes.
Like, it's so simple. And sometimes you get to go through the journey to the other side to recognize how simple it is. And you're never done.
No.
You're never, ever done.
That's exactly it. You're never done. You're probably not even done after you're dead. So, let's face it, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So
Exactly.
that's the way it
Exactly.
works. Well, thank you for this, Paula. And we're going to be back with Paula next week. We're going to continue her story. And we're also going to find out how she does work as a healer and as an advisor to young people, to young women. So I'm going to close, as usual, with one of the divine downloads. And I'm going to read this from my book, which will be out shortly, the Mandala, yay, finally, the Mandala Meditations. So this is a brief poem. The point of light which draws us near eradicates the soul of fear. The lurking presence undermined will find we leave them all behind. Their desperate ways, their wicked thought, they think each one can now be bought by promises of life or love, not love that comes from high above. Within your deepest soul so true lies love beyond what they can do. This love is seamless, bright, and clear, and lays aside your inner fear. This love for you, this love for all, is what will make their kingdoms fall. Is this they fear, as rulers do, that power lies within you too? They seek the dark to hide the light, for only they fear inner sight. They need to know, they need to see, not understanding what is free. Don't let them in, don't give them course, for they would rule the world by force. They claim to know the truest way, but liars all, they will not sway. The one who sees and truly knows, the one who causes all to grow. We are the one, the chosen few, one, not the name they gave to you. For chosen is your choosing still, for what you have is your free will. So thank you, everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Yes.
Maddie.
It's always amazing how what I pick lines up with what we talk about, right? So thank you, everybody. We'll be back soon. I really appreciate your listening, as always, and joining us. If you would like to send comments or questions, please do so to Maddie at womensoneness.com. That's Maddie, M-A-D-D-I, no E, M-A-D-D-I, at womensoneness, all one word.com. And Paula, what's your contact info?
Paula at paulajennings.com.
Paula at PaulaJennings, JENNINGS.com. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful, and beautiful week. Bye. Love you.
Thank you for joining us for Home Improvement for the Soul. If you'd like more information, please go to womensoneness.com or maddiecheers.com. That's womensoneness.com or maddiecheers.com. See you on the next episode.